Hey everyone, I hope all of you are doing well. Today we're going to be discussing probably one of the most popular topics among modern culture, I would say, which is happiness. More specifically, why happiness isn't the goal for men. And I want to introduce you to an alternative perspective, which you may find beneficial in how to deal with life's sufferings, pains, anxieties, fears, and so forth. And also more of a practical approach of how we can use some of these ideas to really benefit you in every area of your life. For a man in particular, his ambition, his chief aim in life can't ever possibly be his happiness. Because by nature, a man is born to serve, he is born to protect, he is born to transcend and overcome himself. That is a big part of what constitutes a man. Secondly, you also have to understand that it doesn't give a man the kind of fulfillment it would give a woman to merely be happy. That is not the kind of fulfillment a man is looking for. The kind of fulfillment a man truly craves ultimately is the kind of fulfillment that comes from undertaking difficult things and subsequently overcoming them. And there is a certain nobility in that for good reason, because not only is a man not made for comfort and leisure, but also because he deserves a higher path for himself. Everyone knows that when a man is living in comfort long enough, it inevitably leads him to more misery, more pain, and more weakness. Why is that? The strength that comes from enduring difficulties, actually having a hard life, is that much more impactful on the human spirit of a man who would otherwise be sitting on the couch all day and binge eating or playing video games. The purpose is discovered through undertaking difficult things, believe it or not, because then the question starts to become, is it happiness that should be prioritized, or maybe is it some kind of fulfillment and meaning beyond that? Because happiness is a symptom of having a higher purpose. Happiness is not a means to an end. It is a symptom of having achieved a certain end. You can't have a transient emotion last forever. And that should be quite a liberating realization, I think, for a lot of men who must endure a lot of difficult things, is that with sufficient exposure and also the voluntary willingness to overcome these things, you can essentially level up and leverage yourself. And of course, life has a lot of suffering, no question. The longer it takes you to basically understand the dual nature of existence, you will not find sufficient peace to contend with the inevitabilities of life. And most people still chase happiness in endless, clever ways. It is almost natural for most people nowadays to use happiness as a cope. You imagine someone being so miserable all the time that the need for happiness is so strong. It almost starts to imply that there is a lack there of happiness, which is far greater than the desire of any other person who might not have the desire for happiness. Then you could argue that that person might have more happiness because he's not consciously and endlessly looking for happiness, and he can relax within himself. A man is born to serve and to transcend his suffering and basically find meaning in the middle of between those two things. The middle is basically the growth. That is where all the beauty happens. If you take away that aspect of the human experience, which is also where all the suffering tends to happen, then you probably have missed the most consequential and beautiful part of the process. That, yes, you could argue that the suffering is very difficult and it's also quite transformative sometimes in negative ways, but also a lot of beauty comes out of it, which basically sustains you and beautifies your own life in ways which maybe you don't fully comprehend at the immediate moment. That's something worth considering, because it is normal for people to get lost in the suffering of life, and they get entrenched in it and almost trapped inside it for a very long time, usually because also they adopt this kind of fatalistic mindset coupled with some kind of weakness which they have, or a predisposition of some sort. These are all copes for people, really. We cope with the unhappiness of life, taking on meditation, therapy, self-help, yoga, mental sciences, all these ways of us pretending that we can somehow save ourselves from the inevitable outcome that we will still have to experience negative emotion, because negative emotion and positive emotion must alternate together for there to be some kind of harmony there. The silences in between the notes in music, for instance, are just as necessary as the whole symphony, because the empty spaces are what create the rhythm and the beautiful pattern, the melody. The same way could be said of your own existence is that if you eliminate the difficulty, you also eliminate the journey, you eliminate the beauty. So you have to take the bad with the good, or the good with the bad, shall I say, and accept that you're not meant to be saved from your own suffering, if that makes sense. You're not meant to somehow find a solution for it. You are actually meant to transcend it through accepting it. Once you accept the dual nature of existence as a man, you can begin to transcend it. But if you're still clutching at it with force and with intensity, you're going to be in a constant struggle with it, which is not going to liberate you from it. And this is why the teachings of Stoicism could be really helpful for men in particular, because you only have so much control over your own life when you think about it. You're in control of your judgment, your thoughts, your choices, and some other things. However, when you really think about it, we spend a lot of our time trying to govern the actions of others, trying to influence it. We are basically trying to control the uncontrollable. We are trying to make things go our way and influence them in such a manner that they must happen as we want them to happen, and that if there is some kind of accident there and things don't really turn out the way we want them to turn out, that it's all terrible, as if we actually know the pattern of our destiny and we can know at any given moment what is best for us. And I think that arises from a certain ignorance more than anything, because we actually don't know what is best for us at any given moment. That's why when difficulty arises, you can't make a premature judgment on it, because you don't actually know if it is misfortune or good fortune. You can't immediately tell if, for example, a loss of some kind, or the death of a loved one, or the loss of a job, you don't immediately know what the consequences of those losses will be. You are making premature judgments, of course, about based on how you feel at that moment. However, you never actually know what will be the result of good fortune, and you don't know what will be the result of bad fortune. And that is one way to basically shift your perspective and really start to appreciate that the process is actually much more mysterious than you think, and that you understand so little of it realistically just from being human. The real self knowledge, in my view, is the realization that you control a very limited amount of variables. To have a beautiful and meaningful experience in life, you must have full commitment to fate, essentially, which means that beyond all else, those variables which lie outside of your control, you will have absolute and total confidence in the first place, because you can't control them. The world around you, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is so much more intelligent than your limited intelligence, that to adopt that kind of confidence in the immediate moment saves you a lot of suffering, and also saves you a lot of time and energy which you could be transmuting into meaningful work. So that is the real self-knowledge in my eyes. And the wise man, or the man of wisdom who has acquired experience, because what is wisdom in a man? Wisdom is nothing more than having lived through hardship and seen things, let's put it that way. And wisdom is derived from experience. And experience is only possible when you have undertaken difficult things in life. And the wise man only desires what is necessary. And he avoids moderation as much as possible. And by moderation, I mean excess, doing things to extremes, bad things specifically. I don't think excess indulgence, undue self gratification is going to lead to the kind of self mastery that will make you a stronger man in the long term. I think those things are found in self restraint, self control, which actually I discussed briefly in one of my earlier videos. That self control is probably one of the most important aspects of what constitutes a man. And through happiness, the realization that you have contentment and wisdom and control that can never be found in external circumstance of any kind. It's That's partly why money can furnish you with material freedom and control over your own health, for instance, and it's mastery over your desires and your impulses that will really give you the freedom that might lead to contentment. Let's put it like that, because you will never have permanent happiness. There is no emotion in the human experience that can be permanent, because we live in a very temporal world. This everything you see around you is temporary. All of this will be gone in a few decades. So that shift in perspective, which is very hard to do. I understand when you're basically entrenched and busied by the conundrums of life. But when you realize that everything that is outside of you, which is basically temporal, is not the same as the soul which is found within yourself, that is something which outlives you, essentially, or let's put it more precisely, it outlives everything which is temporary. The more something tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless. That's why everyone likes to buy real flowers and have to throw them away in 2 weeks rather than having to buy artificial flowers and they never have to change them ever again. The mortality of things, the deadline, let's put it that way, is what brings forth beauty. And it's the same that could be said with men. A man would much rather have a short life, which is filled with the things he likes doing, undertaking the kind of passions and projects which ultimately fill his heart with vigor and fire, and be gone in a few years, rather than live a very long life of comfort and leisure and be absolutely miserable. That is not the kind of life a man should aspire to at all. And even if he does aspire to that life, he will find out it is not quite what he thought it is to begin with. So, what has your experience been? I'm really curious if you've experienced some of these feelings, which could be quite complicated sometimes to even put in words. But if you have any other questions you want answered that perhaps I can cover in any future videos, make sure to put them below as well. I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful day and we'll speak soon. Take care.